lots of information that we're going to be presenting, and also we're actually going to get some work done in the second half of this meeting. So this might be the most work at Mason in a meeting that you'll ever do. So what I'd like to do is tell you real quick what we're going over today. Sorry for the eye chart. You actually have the agenda in front of you. We're going to be giving you a little bit of an overview of what the session is going to be about. We'll talk about what a climate action plan, or a CAP, is, and talk a little bit about our mission and objectives. We're going to give you a greenhouse gas inventory review, which was actually just recently completed, the report. And then we're going to have several people talking about Mason's climate actions to date. So we have a lot of information to give you, and we're going to go through it quickly. So first of all, Mason is an HCU PCC signatory. That is the American College and University President's Climate Commitment, otherwise known as the PCC for short. Really, it says two things. It's signed by university presidents only, and it's an acknowledgement of concern about global warming. It's an acknowledgement that we need to take a leadership role in educating people about climate change through higher education. And it pledges a commitment, finally, to climate neutrality through specific actions and timelines. So what is climate neutrality? You hear this term thrown around a lot. It has two components. First of all, it means we're going to endeavor to reduce our emissions as much as possible before we then secondarily purchase offsets that we can no longer reduce because we're as efficient as we can possibly be. So really broad timeline to date. It was actually summer '07, President Merton signed our PCC. In October, well actually in September of '07, I started as a sustainability coordinator at Mason and started up the office. January '08 through February, which is just now actually, we were working with several students to prepare our greenhouse gas inventory. And we also formed our Climate Action Planning Core Planning Committee. So what are we doing this spring? We're working on our Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Planning and Energy Strategies, otherwise known as CAPES class, was launched, and it's being delivered by Environmental Science and Policy Department faculty and students to facilitate CAP development and learning about climate in general. So we're at today, February 17th, and we're launching our climate action planning effort. So there are three main phases of the commitment. Within 2 months of signing the commitment in summer of '07, we needed to set up the structure to support decision making around sustainability and climate. We needed to, secondarily, we needed to complete our greenhouse gas inventory, which I just mentioned we finished recently. And the third main component is that we need to complete a plan for climate neutrality, which is what we need your guys' help with. And I would like to introduce our core planning committee, and I'd like to have them stand up. I'm already standing. I'm Lena Storm. I'm the sustainability coordinator. I'd like to introduce Dr. Dan Scleroux, who's teaching the climate action seminar. Several of his students are here today, and we'll be working with all of you on the subgroups. Robert Johnson is a master's student in environmental science and policy. Rob was instrumental to me and to the office in completing the greenhouse gas inventory. Erin Hartman is from ITU and libraries, and she's also the chair or the co-chair for the Sustainability Council Climate and Energy Working Group. Colin Bennett, who's over there on the camera, and works for me in the Office of Sustainability, and Danielle Wyman, who's So what I'd like to do is hand it over to Dr. Scleroux to talk a little bit about what climate action planning means and what it's going to look like for us.
I'm ecstatic to try to be part of the team to help you to develop this climate action plan. And our aim over the course of the next several months is really to draft Mason's first climate action plan for approval by President Merton in September of this year, and then implementation ASAP thereafter. We're not sure exactly what date that will be, but you're going to help us to figure that out. So what is a CAP? In short, our vision is to achieve climate neutrality, or as Leonard referred to, no net greenhouse gas emissions by minimizing those emissions and using carbon offsets and other measures to mitigate the remaining emissions. How do we do it? Very shortly, we're going to identify, evaluate, and characterize a target date. Do we think we can get there in 1 year, in 5 years, in 50 years? You'll help us to decide that. Also to set some interim targets for goals and actions that will lead us to neutrality. Third, we'll be looking at actions to integrate climate neutrality and sustainability into the curriculum, as well as other student experiences, co-curricular activities, and things like that. Fourth, we're looking to have actions to expand research and other efforts that might be necessary to achieve climate neutrality in the future. Some of my colleagues in ESP, for example, are working on algal energy sources that might be alternative fuels, things like that. And finally, we're looking to develop mechanisms for tracking progress and goals and actions. So through those 5 steps and 5 different tracks, we're hoping to develop a plan which will be able to carry us through at least the next 2 years at a point when we'll actually revisit the plan and revise it and adapt over time as new technologies and behaviors and policies come online. So every 2 years, we'll look forward to reconvening this meeting and carry it forward from there. So how do we get from here into September? As Len already mentioned, we're launching our climate action planning team today, and you are our team. At the end of February, our first task will be to define the technical policy or process problems that are potential sources of emissions. And we're going to start that process today with what we call fishbone diagrams to help us look at some of those root causes. Then by the mid-March or so, we're hoping to identify and define potential emissions reduction solutions within 3 major categories. Things we can do technically, what sorts of technologies we could buy or implement that would help us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. The policy activities, like maybe we're only going to give the front row of each parking lot to electric cars or solar cars, or some kind of policies that can be set up. And finally, behavioral actions, like things that faculty, students, or staff can do, like reducing, not leaving on our computer monitors when we leave our desk, for example. Finally, then next in April, May, we'll be looking at task 3, which is a little bit overlapping in time frame with task 4. And task 3 is really to develop strategic options for timelines to achieve our neutrality target, including the carbon offset strategy. You can imagine we can hit offsets very quickly with enough funding, but in order to actually do things on campus, may require a longer time frame. Task 4 is an analysis and prioritization of the solution, so we really evaluate what we can really start to take on over the next 2 years. And finally, by mid-May, we're hoping to actually draft the climate action plan, and then refine that over the summer, bring in some financing aspects that we may not be able to get to over the course of the semester, and deliver it to Dr. Merton in September. And now I'd like to pass the mic over to Rob Johnson, one of our co-authors on the greenhouse gas inventory.
As a part of understanding where you're going and understanding where you are. So over the last year, we've done our first greenhouse gas inventory to try to identify the quantity of emissions per source. So this is basically what I'm going to cover, how we did it, what the data we collected was, what the results are, and the recommendations that we came up with. So this is the tool we used. The bottom line is that the World Resources Institute Greenhouse Gas Protocol sectorizes emission sources by scope. So from that, a nonprofit called the Clean Air Cool Planet organization developed a calculator that's based in Excel to quantify emission sources, factoring in emissions factors, balancing out for a year. Balancing out for a year cetera, et cetera. Basically, it's a tool that we use short of developing our own, and made it a lot quicker to input data. So this is how the scope emission sources are divided into scope 1, 2, and 3. You'll hear this again later. But the bottom line is that bottom chart is our source of data per emissions. So, for example, scope 1 is on-campus power. We don't have much of that. Scope 2 is purchased electricity as the primary driver. Scope 3 is basically commuting is the largest driver. So these are our results. Our inventory was for data collected from data from fiscal year 02 to fiscal year 07. So that's July of 02 to June of 08. So the bottom line here is that you can see it's generally increasing since then. In the graph on the right, the upticks for 2005 and 2007 are air travel data. Those were the only 2 years that we included that data, mainly because it's a large data source and it's all hard copy. It's not digital until 1 February of this year. So the travel office has implemented a digital tool to enable travel calculation and request submission, and that would make it much easier in the future to calculate mileage. Let's go back. Sorry. So the largest for FY07, the largest sources of emissions are purchased electricity and commuting. Not surprising. So the next charts on the next slide is our trend data, both by per operating dollar, by per student, and per community member, and then the bottom one is per square footage of building space. Interesting to note, the per square footage of building space, what looks like a drop from 05 to 06. If you notice, the graph does not start at 0, so that's only a 2 kilogram difference from year to year. Effectively, this shows that we are at least maintaining the per unit emissions, or emissions per unit, and it optimistically shows that we're actually decreasing. The Energy Office has already implemented some energy efficiency measures and has a 15-year contract with Siemens for energy efficiency, so that's actually a good sign. So here are what our recommendations are. We came up with some process recommendations, essentially to improve data collection, conduct the inventory every 2 years, which would mean we would start again in January, so immediately following the completion of the CAP, and then collect more detailed travel and commuting data. There's already an ongoing effort with the Transportation Office to make that happen, basically figure out per parking pass and per registration schedule what people's commute frequencies and habits are. And then some mitigation factors, mitigation recommendations, continue to implement the efficiency solutions, ultimately figure out how to reduce the travel and commuting emissions, and then they identify innovative funding mechanisms. You'll hear more about this later, but basically find a way other than the Mason budget to move through grants or whatever to implement some alternative energy solutions.
Sorry about that. We're actually going to hear from a couple of process owners at Mason, and so we're going to hear from Tom Calhoun first.
Well, we do Dr. Burton first.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. We have a change in agenda. We're going to hear from our top-level climate champion, President Merton.
Very excited with that. First of all, I want to thank Lena for all the time and energy and excitement that she has brought to all of our efforts related to climate change, climate commitment, etc. I also want to thank Lena for being part of a key decision that we made over the last half year or so, and that is to organize ourselves better to both deal with the academic issues associated with curriculum and climate change, and also our own activities. So with them all, but that's another discussion. First of all, I want to thank all of you for your commitment to making George Mason University a better place to live and work, a better place because we have our commitment not only to the institution's best, but to a more broader set of efforts related to our commitment to climate change. I was asked almost several years ago now to sign the President's climate commitment to, in a sense, bring George Mason University to join a set of other universities to really commit ourselves to being a model of actions necessary to do the right thing with respect to our resources, with respect to the climate. I signed the document. I remember when I signed it, I talked with several other university presidents who made a decision not to sign it. In many cases, the decision not to sign it was based on the fact that, can I really make a commitment? Can I make a commitment given that I'm so dependent on others, in our case, in the state and federal government? And several of us who signed it made the commitment because we realized, yes, we are dependent on the actions of others, but we have to stand up and make the commitment. So it's something that I did, and I'm glad that I did it. What I've found in this area, this may be a little bit of my philosophy of what we're doing, I found when we talk about issues related to climate, green, et cetera, that really two things are most important to me. I see three things are most important. The first thing is the need to separate or to be clear about facts versus opinion. I don't think I've ever seen an area where there is potentially more confusion and more damage that can be done when people don't separate facts from opinion. One of my favorite former U.S. senators, now he's passed away, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, had a great line. He said, everybody is entitled to their own opinion. They're just not entitled to their own facts. And then I think in this area, we all gain credibility at all levels. These are the facts. This is based on these facts. These are my opinion. This is your opinion. We agree sometimes, we disagree. So the whole issue of fact versus opinion is one that I think we have to be vigilant on, both with respect to us as a university, or us as an institution, but also with us as a university. The second belief I have in this area is that we have to remember going green is one thing, staying green is another. If we're not careful, we may create something throughout the university where we get all excited at the beginning of the process, but then the hard work, the details are left to someone else. So we have to keep in mind that going green is one thing, staying green is another. We have to institutionalize our processes, our activities to do that. The third thing that drives me in this area is that we have a unique responsibility in higher education because we are both a complex institution. I don't know how many hundreds of buildings we have. We have thousands of students, thousands of employees, thousands of this and hundreds of that. So if you took off the name university, we would be an institution that's got to do the right thing with respect to this. But secondly, we are an institution of higher education. We have to take what we do as an institution and what we do as our faculty and others do. We've got to instill and we have the opportunity to instill in people's minds, young people's minds, not so young people's minds, what are the issues associated with climate change and what are the issues associated with doing the right thing with respect to not only going green, staying green. So there's two separate sets of issues here, one as an institution and secondly as a university, but they interact with each other and overlap each other. I think that's something that we always have to do. We have a unique responsibility. Not only do I feel that I had to, I wanted to sign the climate commitment, but it made sense. Now we need you, we need others to help us create the climate action plan, and we need you as a group, as the climate action planning team, to in a sense help us set specific goals, help us measure if we're getting close to those goals, that help us measure what we have to do to in a sense be successful in reaching those goals. So I appreciate your efforts in this. As I said to a remind people what good behavior is. My 4-year-old grandson at an event at our house one day, and I was brushing my teeth, and he walked in, and he looked at me, and he calls me Poppy. I said, Poppy, we turn off the water while we brush our teeth. And, you know, he didn't look, he wasn't cruel, he was just stating a fact. You know, you're letting the water run while you're brushing your teeth. I've been taught at age 4 not to let the water run while I'm brushing my teeth. I think we need to have goals, but we need to, in this area, have a group, as you're all taking on responsibilities to set those goals, to measure us, help us celebrate when we exceed expectations, to exceed the goal, but then also remind us when we're not doing a good job. If we at George Mason University can be a model for this, it's just one more time we've been a model for something that's made a difference. And I'm going to do what I have to do. I know you're doing what you have to do. We have to keep communicating. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Today we're in a room and someone walked over and turned on the lights. Someone else said, well, if not a storm was at this meeting, we would turn on the lights. So we went over and turned the lights on. But it's the big stuff, but maybe it's the small. Maybe it is the small stuff as well. So thank you. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your support. But really thank you for your ideas and thank you for your vigilance. As much as thank you all.
Actually give President Merton a cheer for climate action t-shirt.
I like that. Thank you. Thank
Wear
you.
that while brushing your teeth. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we're gonna rewind now, and we are privileged to have a couple of our process owners here today to tell us about some things that are going on in facilities and in the transportation sector. And first, we're going to hear from Tom Kelton, who's the VP for facilities, and he'll tell us a little bit about what's been going on in that arena. Welcome, Tom.
No, you don't need me to speak it though.
It would really help.
I won't sing any louder songs. Lena's asked me to talk about facilities and then primarily focus on energy because, when we talk about climate, in some degree it all boils down to energy use. It's not entirely true, but for a large part of your climate impact comes from energy use. And so we're doing a lot of things in the facilities world around energy, have been doing it for years. And so let me talk about a couple of those things. Dr. Merton talked about a minute ago about turn the water off, when you're brushing your teeth. Ultimately, what we need to do as part of this team and as part of what we're doing is change behavior, and not just at the university, but across the country and across the world, because that's what will really make a difference. But there are things that we can do to help people, even when they're not changing behavior. To the extent that we can use a unit less of energy to do the same thing, that's a good thing. So there are some things that we're doing to help people as we are simultaneously changing behavior, and that's really what this group does. We are planning new buildings that meet the stricter energy standards through leadership in energy and environmental design. Our planning group, we've gotten the Board of Visitors to commit to all new buildings will meet a LEED Silver standard. So we're planning and then constructing new buildings that are by themselves more energy efficient than the ones we built 5 years ago, and certainly 10, 15 years ago. So we did nothing else. The new buildings that we're bringing online, as we use them, we're using less energy per square foot, per student, and those kinds of things. But we're also doing some things with the facilities that we have online today in the area of reducing our energy use per activity. And the biggest tool that we've used over the past few years is what's called an Energy Savings Performance Contract, or ESPC. And you hear the term Siemens. Siemens obviously is a company, multinational company, and in the energy world. And they are our partner. We went through a competitive process a few years ago and selected Siemens as our energy partner. And we awarded a first contract with Siemens, I guess in 2006 was the time that we did that. And the short version of this is, what we're interested in doing is taking a lot of small to big energy improvement steps, from replacing lights to replacing boilers to putting in water flow restrictors, all those kinds of things. And then using somebody else's, using our own money in the future to pay for that. And just to put it in perspective, this first contract that we did in 2006, we bought about $12 million worth of energy improvements. Again, everything from replacing all the light fixtures to water flow meters to all kinds of things like that. But we didn't put any money out in cash. What we did was borrowed money against our future energy savings. So what the contract does is guarantee us that we'll save $1 million a year in reduced energy costs. And then it took a piece of that. Numbers don't make a whole lot of difference to you, but say $800,000 of that to start paying off that $12 million. So we pocketed some of the change, and the other $800,000 went to pay off the mortgage. It's like having a mortgage in our house. We did it on energy savings. So we bought $12 million worth of stuff and are paying for it over 15 years through energy savings. Now, so the guaranteed savings was $1 million. In fact, we're saving $2 million a year. So we're pocketing $1.2 million in my example, the $200,000 for the extra $1 million that goes to other uses on campus and those kinds of things. Now that additional savings comes about from a couple of things. One, energy rates went through the roof after 2006, so we're paying more per unit of energy. So it's kind of a false, there's no, just on that alone it wasn't a savings of additional energy. But in fact, we did save more energy than we thought we were going to do. We modeled a certain energy savings per square foot or per initiative, and we outperformed that. So as a result of this, we're doing two things. One, we're saving money for the university, which is critical at this point when we have budget cuts and those kinds of things. But at the same time, we're reducing our energy use, reducing our impact on the climate and those kinds of things. If you look at that first phase contract, just in environmental terms, it's the equivalent of taking 2,500 cars off the road for that 15 years. We save that much in carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide, and noxious, all those greenhouse gases. We reduced that need by about 2,500 cars worth. You could also do the same equivalency in terms of acres of forest and those kinds of things. So that's a significant impact on the university and our impact on the climate, both in dollars and in greenhouse gases. Now, that was the first phase. We are now talking with Siemens about the second phase. And each time you do it, it's a little bit harder because you took all the easy things the first time. And there's some constraints on what we can and can't do, But what we're doing now is negotiating a second contract, which will do the same thing. This time we're targeting a little bit less in savings, partly because of, we took the easy things before, but for a couple others. This time I think we're targeting about $700,000 in savings. And if we continue to outperform like we have in the past, we'll save more than that. Things that we're anticipating doing with this that we'll start this year, the board just approved it last week or 2 weeks ago, is we're going to replace all the street lights on campus with LED lights. Very expensive to do. We couldn't do that on our own. It's $2 million worth of light fixture changes. But it's a significant impact. It's very visible. Everybody can drive on campus and see we're making a difference. And it is making a difference. So we're doing some combination of things. We're replacing boilers. We're doing some other lighting fixtures and stuff like that. So this is a significant tool that we're using as part of our ability to reduce our energy consumption. Now the challenge for us all, and I know my 2 minutes is up, is that we continue to build new buildings to meet our mission of delivering education services to the Commonwealth and students, so on and so forth. So unlike some schools who have had the same number of students for 100 years, as we continue to grow, the challenge is truly being green, carbon neutral as we grow. But to the extent that we can be carbon neutral per student, that's a tremendous goal and something I think that we can achieve within this group. So A lot of things going on in facilities. Certainly the Siemens contract is the biggest one. I'll be happy to stay and talk to you afterward about others. So with that, thank you.
I'd like to invite Josh Cantor to come up from Parking and Transportation to talk about our second biggest emission source, transportation.
Thank you, Lena. For you who don't know me, I'm Josh Cantor. I'm the Director of Parking and Transportation. No parking complaints today, though. I said our training, kind of like Lena's office, and it's actually pretty recent in its creation. Our transportation office was created in 2005 as a formal entity. We created a transportation coordinator position. We have a new transportation coordinator as of last November, Bob Tennant. Stand up, Bob, real quick. Since Lena's been here, we've been a partner with the Sustainability Office. Obviously, a large part of the greenhouse emissions data is parking, transportation related. We've undertaken some academic partnerships. We have 2 research students under Dr. Zolnick. Stand up. You don't have to stand up. And then we also have 2 additional students under Dr. McKnight in psychology. They're doing sustainable transportation research for us to kind of help guide us specifically in our department, as well as the sustainability program in our future efforts. Real quickly, our transportation, our major entity is our shuttle program. It started off as a van running between Prince William and Fairfax about 7 years ago. Now we have 4 different routes. We have about 30,000 passenger trips per month. And then that's in addition to the Q bus, which students and employees can ride for free via university subsidy to the city. That has another between 250,000 to 370,000 trips per year. So imagine every trip, not only is it a trip saved and the emissions saved on campus, but within the region, stretching from Arlington all the way to Loudoun County as far as our academic purposes. We have a van pool program primarily within facilities management. There's several van pools they've had for many years. We've instituted some private van pools as well. We have van pools from Fredericksburg, from Luray, Front Royal. So we have people that are taking individual efforts. As Dr. Merton mentioned, like the action of turning the water off while brushing your teeth, is the individual choice to, can I not drive my car today? A lot of the commitment that people make, they think of it as an all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a simple choice of, I have to drive my car some days, but maybe once or twice a week I can ride the shuttle, I can ride the metro. So every little bit helps. That's kind of part of the message that we're hoping to send out. And then on the parking side, some of the things that we're going to be instituting in the near future is a formalized carpool program that will have incentives for people to carpool together. I know it's already done on an informal basis by many, but it's part of what can the university do to provide that extra incentive to get somebody to not drive alone. So it's a combination of many steps that you're hoping to take through education, through operations to reduce the single occupancy vehicle. Probably, I said, for you to know me, I can talk forever, but I'll stop.
Thank you so much. I'm going to real briefly talk about some communications and outreach projects that have been going on. And so Dr. Ed Maybach of the Center of Excellence for Climate Change Communication taught a graduate level class last spring, and they worked on doing a campus-wide survey on people's understanding about climate initiatives and issues. And the main message here is that the university population is ignorant but enthusiastic. 74% of responders said they had no idea the president had signed the president's climate commitment, but 90% said they'd be very pleased if Mason were able to reduce our emissions. So one of the biggest problems when people were asked to write in their concerns was that they didn't think that the administration was serious about this commitment, and they weren't unsure about the feasibility of actually making climate neutrality a reality. So through this effort, we had 500 people volunteer to be climate champions. In other words, to educate their peers on climate issues. And what really came out of this for me was we need to communicate campus, our administration is committed to this, and we are serious about doing this, and working together, it will be feasible. So one of the main things that we're going to be working on within these subgroups is to talk about how do we spread the word on what we are doing, and how do we spread the word better about what people can do on an individual basis. Colin Bennett, who's behind the camera, will come up and talk a little bit about our most recent effort to be America's greenest campus. Right here, I'll let him talk about it more, but you can see our leaderboard. We're actually neck and neck with U Maryland. So let's hear it for U Maryland, right? No. Okay, Colin.
All right, show of hands, how many people have already signed up for this contest? Holy cow, what am I doing up here? All right, so for those few of you that haven't, what you should do as soon as you get back to your office or wherever you're going is you should go to climateculture.com/America's_greenest_campus. And if you can't remember that, I'll hand you one of these flyers. The brief update, though, is that these numbers are from yesterday. We've actually increased. We're now over 500 people who have registered at George Mason University for this campus, which is really quite amazing because we've done that in a few short weeks. I think we started somewhere in the middle of January, and just through word of mouth and a lot of persistence, we've gotten up over 500. So we're in second place, which is a little bit unfortunate because we were in first place for right up until last week, where all of a sudden UMD came out of nowhere. But the good news is that since Friday of last week, we were at 300 something, so we gained over 150 people in about 3 days, whereas in the same time period, UMD gained about 50. So the theory is that they got all their low-hanging fruit, and now they plateaued, and now we've got all our low-hanging fruit really quickly, and then we've been steadily increasing over time, 50 here, 20 there, 70 there. So there's a real chance that we're going to win this contest, and if we do, we can win up to $20,000 if we win all 3 different categories of the prize. But more than just the prize money, it's actually having a real effect on people's lives here at Mason, the people who are signing up to participate and then making commitments to actually reduce their carbon footprint. So we have a student here who's actually going to talk briefly about some of the things that she's learned from the contest, as well as the effect that it's had on her. So, Maheen.
Thank you, Colin. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Colin has mentioned, I have enrolled in the challenge to reduce my carbon dioxide emissions by joining the Climate Culture website. My current carbon dioxide emissions were calculated to be about 72,000 pounds per year, which is 33 metric tons of carbon dioxide. After a few actions that I'm taking are driving less aggressively, reduce the weight in my car's trunk, scraping instead of rinsing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher, washing fewer and larger loads of laundry, and watching movies in the dark. This will give me a total reduction of 22,000 pounds per year, which will save me over $300 a year. After enrolling at this website, I have realized that this is not just a competition for me, it has changed my everyday lifestyle. It has led me to spread the news. I have spoken to my family at the dinner table, and after getting permission from my professor at applied ecology, I spoke to my classmates regarding the Climate Culture website and got a lot of positive feedback from not only my classmates, but my professor as well. In my Climate Action Plan class with Dr. Skleru, I also suggested that Mason implement policies to ensure that computers are in energy savings sleep mode for each computer at Mason. I hope to continue to make a difference while working with the Climate Action team. Thank you.
Thank you, Maheen. I hope everybody has learned a bunch this morning. Sorry about that. It's always morning in my head.